Hey everyone, Patrick here. I am so excited our series, the APAHM Conversations, was named a finalist for the second annual Signal Awards. To celebrate this, and as part of our campaign to try and win this thing, over the next 10 days, I am re-airing the series in its entirety. I hope you enjoy revisiting these incredible conversations I had with these amazing guests, and if it's your first time listening, welcome. I hope you enjoy them as well. After you listen, please cast your vote. You can find the link to do so in the show notes, on IG at Conversation Podpiece, or by going to our website, conversationpeacepod.com. Without further ado, here are the APAHM Conversations. Hey everybody, welcome to Conversation Piece with Patrick Armstrong. I am the titular Patrick, and this is the show where my guests and I discuss what piece or parts of the conversation we aren't talking about but should be. Special shout out to all my returning listeners, and a high five and hello to everyone joining us for the very first time. Thank you so much. The month of May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, or APAHM, and is meant to celebrate and reflect on the history and peoples that make up our beautiful diaspora. As part of that reflection, this month, I'll be sharing 9 conversations with friends and folks I greatly admire in the community as we discuss those missing pieces of the Asian American conversation. What we know, what we might not know, and what we can do about it. These are the APAHM Conversations. My guest today is a queer, non-binary, Black and Asian writer, dancer, trumpeter, and community organizer in New York City. They are known for founding the Blasian March, a Black Asian solidarity initiative through education and celebration. And they also hold a Bachelor of the Arts in Ethnomusicology from Northwestern University. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Rohan Zhou-Lee to the show. Hey, Rohan.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I always freak out when I hear my bio. I'm like, is that me? Like,
I resonate with that so much because I feel like I've been hearing mine a little bit more lately when I go and be interviewed on podcasts, and it's strange to me to feel like I have things that even could be listed off as things that I've either done or I am. So
it's such like an out of body experience. I'm like, oh, did I do that? Am I really that person? Am I that bitch? I don't know. And then in comes like imposter syndrome, and you're like, no, you are that bitch, girl. Don't worry about it.
100%. That imposter syndrome is so real. Like as I'm doing this project and as I've been working on this series, I feel that I've been feeling those pangs of imposter syndrome. Like, am I supposed to be doing this? And then each time I have a conversation, it's like, oh, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I am here to do this work. So I totally resonate with that. Again, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me for this conversation. And I introduced you a little bit, but before we dive into that conversation that we're going to have, if you don't mind, would you share a little bit more about yourself for people who may not know you, who might be listening to the show right now?
Yeah, sure. Like you said, I'm an organizer. My main focus right now is around building Black Asian solidarity with our community. So the Blasian March is an entity that basically builds that through education on parallel experiences with racial injustice, colonial state violence, settler colonialism, as well as mutual celebration of our lives. We started during the lockdown of 2020, and since then we have expanded to New York, New Haven, Chicago, Los Angeles, and there are folks in other cities who are working on other projects. So it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's terrifying to be like, oh, this thing I thought that'd be a one-time protest has now just turned into like this conglomerate thing. She is definitely outgrown beyond my expectations. So like apart from like the marches, we also have community fridge filling programs where we fill community fridges. We also hand out like educational information in collaboration with our partner organization, Asians for Abolition, which I also co-founded back in 2020. And then these past 2 years, well, this year and now last year, we started a new program called the Blasian March Book Fair, where like we hand out free books from Black and Asian writers to kind of like build solidarity through storytelling. Um, but yeah, that's the Blasian March. Myself, my writing, I write poetry, fantasy. I also work as a journalist on the side. Um, which is all on my website, which you can read for free. Shameless plug there. And yeah, as a dancer, I work mostly in ballet, but I've done musical theater. These days, I'm more focusing on art that kind of fulfills my vision as
Mm,
as an activist, as an organizer. And it's been quite the adventure since letting go of a lot of expectations around what dance should be like for me. Like, what should my dance career look like? And now I'm kind of just like, honey, thanks to my activism, I've already danced in Europe,
mm,
which just wasn't even a possibility in the usual audition cycles, which are very much under a white male gaze about
sure.
who even gets into the companies. So I was like, it's fine. It's totally fine.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And you talked about this vision that you have. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is that vision for that you see in terms of not only your activism, but what you do and bring to it from that dancer perspective as well?
Sure. I think for me, it's like I really hope that we can go back to the ways of our elders, the ways of our ancestors, where like the only way we made progress is through collective work, through
Mm,
solidarity action. Like so much of our history is dependent on solidarity, cross racial solidarity organizing, solidarity across class, across citizenship, across disability, across gender, sexual identity. Um, and so for me, I keep thinking, oh, well, as one person, I can only do so much in this
mm,
lifetime. And what can I do right now? And for
right.
me, as a Black Asian, the best thing I can do is to re-establish those ties between our communities that have been very specifically erased by white society, by white miseducation,
Mm,
by these structures that now we are fighting for. Like this whole fight for Asian American history and public education, that's a lot of undoing of erasure. And erasure is a structure that white supremacy relies heavily on in order to keep us separate. So,
one of the things that really drew me to you at first was just how important that message and how much at the forefront that message of solidarity across communities was. And I feel like I found your profile specifically in the work that you've been doing. And I was like, they are having these conversations and coalition building and doing the things that I'm only just now starting to like feel in my mind is what needs to be happening. And so you specifically have been such a inspiration to me to have those conversations, not only with my community broadly, but here locally as well in Indianapolis. So I just wanted to affirm you in that and the work that you've been doing because you are inspiring people left and right with what
oh,
you want to do. And I count myself lucky among those people. So I'm really excited to be able to dive into this with you today and talk about, again, the point of this series, the APAHM Conversations, is to address that specific missing piece or what missing pieces we aren't talking about but need to be talking about right now. So I want to ask you, what do you think that is? For you, specifically from your perspective, what are we missing from that conversation around Asian America that we really need to be making sure is included every time we're having that conversation?
mm. Oh, that's such a great question. I really think that one thing we really need to look at is how that erasure is contributing to our internalized self hatred as a community.
Mm,
Because I think a lot of times as Asian Americans, because we don't know our history, we are organizing from a place of we think we're starting from scratch. We
mm,
think we are building community from scratch, which I know for a lot of us, where we come from second gen, first gen diaspora experiences, that is something to be held in conversation. And that also gets, conflated with other folks from other diasporas coming into the Americas. And so we have to like almost like rebuild over and over and over again. There's a constant
Right.
struggle there. But I really do think that because we don't know our history, there is such a deep, we don't know who we are as a people. And I think that contributes to a lot of the internalized hatred that we have for ourselves as Asian Americans. And that manifests as scarcity mentality, where we are constantly being like, well, we have to have something. And, 2021 for some people was like, this is our time to like,
Mm,
be visible, when it's like, but we have this long history of visibility.
right.
We don't talk about civil rights era through a lens of Asian American history, or thinking about Grace Lee Boggs, who was a Chinese American woman who collaborated directly with Dr. King multiple times. We don't talk about Kiyoshi Kuromiya, who was an openly gay Japanese American who marched with King on Selma when King was assassinated. He helped watch the children in 1980. He was also at the Black Panther Party convention and was the only openly gay panelist there. And that was also the year that Fred Hampton made a speech in solidarity with like the queer community for women's rights. And, there's so many points where I'm like, but you see how critical Asian America is to civil rights history, how critical Asian America is to social justice history. And because we don't know these things, we cannot build a well or a story that creates Asian pride.
Mm,
We're always we're talking about we're so proud to be Asian, but it's like, what does that mean?
right.
What does
Right.
it mean when we don't know who we are? We don't know our history. We don't know what we've survived. Um, and so because of that, there is this odd scarcity mentality I've seen that comes with that internalized hate. Um, so, like for example, last year there was a rash of anti-Asian, interpersonal anti-Asian violence towards specifically Filipino Americans,
Okay.
and so several Filipino Americans here in New York were like, we should do something about it. Yes, it's like it's the time we finally have this attention because we all know how media cycles cycle on and the story gets forgotten even though the anti-Asian violence is continuing. And when I was pulled in to like organize, collaborate, be a speaker, there was a point where they literally they cut me from like any list as a speaker. They cut
Oh,
me from
wow.
like all these things because they didn't want to include Black Filipinos. And I was told like, we should aim for what's feasible at the moment. When it's like, see that internalized hatred has now also translated into anti-Blackness. It's translated into hatred towards other communities, and that limits Asian power.
Right. Right. Because we're not working together
Right.
to build or not only to build new, but to build off the foundation, like you said, of the people that have come before us, to know our
Mhm.
history, to know this work, to know the folks that have been involved in this work as well. It makes me think of my upbringing as a Korean adoptee and my proximity to whiteness and how I
Yeah.
really internalized that self-hatred and self-loathing for a long time. And I've been telling this story recently, but the abridged version is when I was at Purdue, I was in class one day and an Asian girl came up to me and she was speaking to me and I was still deeply rejecting my Asian identity. And she was speaking in a language I didn't understand, and I kind of waved her off and was just like,
Mm.
I don't want, this is uncomfortable for me. And I think about that moment a lot because I think about how not only was that my self-rejection deeply harmful to me, but it
Yeah.
then manifested in external harm to other folks who are even within my own community and diaspora. And so, and because I had no idea, I didn't know what it meant to be Asian. I didn't know anything about Asian American history. I didn't know what it meant to be adopted. There's all these different things that I didn't know about. And you talked about the erasure specifically being a tool of white oppression, white supremacy specifically, and how it forces us almost to internalize
Yeah.
that really negative viewpoint of ourselves and to operate from a place of scarcity. I feel like in these conversations, at least half of them, we've talked about scarcity mindset and how
Yep.
detrimental it is to moving forward, not only as an Asian American diaspora, but as a like a complete group, a cross racial, cross community solidarity group that moves forward together in order to
Absolutely.
try and do something better, to do something new, to replace these systems that don't work for us with ones that actually do. And I wanted to ask you then, based on that erasure, how do we as Asian Americans, as an Asian American community,
Mhm.
focus on combating that? You talked about obviously educating ourselves, knowing our history. Where do we start, especially for folks who come to it later in life, who
Yeah.
maybe right now are just like in their 40s or 50s and who are like, oh, I actually need to know this, but where do I begin?
Mm. Well, if you have access to internet, Google is free,
Right.
unless you're trying to research the Palestinian experience, which case that's a little more complicated. Um, I really like for myself because I can only speak to my experience. For me, what was really powerful was starting at the beginning of what is your story as an individual. So,
Mm,
like, even if you don't specifically have direct roots, there still is a diaspora community that you're stepping into that you have inherited. So, like, even though, for example, my Filipino roots um, come through Barbados, thank you, colonization. Um, um, so many things. Ah, gosh, give us our gold back. And everything you took. It still was really powerful for me to look into the Filipino American experience. And I mean, I like to read. So if you don't read, you can always look up documentaries. There's so much film that tells stories as well. But for me, what was really pivotal was having Filipino American literature
mm,
because it speaks very specifically to that diaspora experience. So like for me, it's like as Asian Americans, we should take the time to really do that in-depth research, and from that research gather what have we survived, um, and what have we accomplished as a people. I mean, I always go back to Gracie Boggs, and that brings up me being Chinese American and how I'm so proud because I now have this legacy. Um, but then I also get really angry when I think about, the LA Chinatown massacre, the
mm.
Rock Springs massacre, this very direct oppression of Chinese folks because of demand for labor, because of xenophobia, which are things that we still see today.
Right.
Um, demand for labor, yet we don't want the people doing the labor. Make
Ma-
it make sense.
The math,
Make
the,
it make
the
sense, white
math does not
society.
math in that equation.
The math ain't math and honey. So for me, it's always like take the time to really like find the roots, find as much story as you can, and the well keeps getting deeper and deeper the more you dig. It took me so much more research to find that even like in the late 1800s there was for example, the Spanish trade of goods from Southeast Asia into the
Mm,
Caribbean, which they called the Manila trade. Um, but what they don't say, galleon trade, sorry. But what they don't say is that they were also forced migrating Filipinos to do that labor as well,
mm,
which now historians are calling unfree labor because there's not enough evidence to say that they are brought over in chains the way African people were. But
sure.
there's still a level of this is not consensual. Like,
Right. 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 Right.
right. There's still a form of human trafficking here that is just like not okay.
Right.
Um, but then the amount of resistance history, how Filipinos actually fought their way free of the Spanish and like fled into places like Louisiana, where in the same area they built community with like indigenous folks. Um, there's an area in Louisiana called Jean Saint Malo, and that's where a lot of Filipinos were. And it was actually named after uh, um, uh, an African slave rebel who collaborated and like with people in the area, which included Filipinos. So like, there's so much resistance history that's like not being told on purpose over and over and over again. So to me, it's like really taking the dive and being open to the stories that come your way.
I love that. Being open, especially because, again, as I mentioned before, people might be coming to this later in their lives, and it can feel insurmountable. I started this at 30, like my journey at 30, and it felt insurmountable for a really long time. But I loved what you said at the very beginning about you have to, or a good piece of advice being starting at the beginning of your own story, because, like you said, you're entering into this community that you're already a part of, and it's maybe a little bit easier in that way because you can see stories that maybe resemble yours or stories that you can resonate with really, and build from there. But also having to be open to learning that, because obviously there's generational divides, generational beliefs and ideologies that are probably being carried forth as well. And at the end of the day, understanding this history, educating ourselves is one of the best ways that we can combat that erasure. And
Absolutely.
so the other side of this coin is the people outside of the Asian American community. We've talked a lot about already in the very short time about just that cross-racial solidarity specifically. And then how whiteness specifically moves against us, not only Asian Americans, but all communities of color or communities of historically marginalized identities. They're working actively to erase those things. How do communities outside of Asian America help to support and continue to address that missing piece, that erasure piece that's happening because of one other dominant group, or the specifically quote unquote dominant group?
That is such a good question because I cannot tell you how many times non-Asian activists I have worked with have participated in that erasure.
Mm,
It's like I've been to so many protests back in 2020, and you would see so many Asian Americans as safety, as the medics, doing a lot of the logistical background work. And then you'd see leadership being like, thank you, white people, for coming. Thank you, Latinos, for coming, but no one
mm,
mentioned the Asians. So I think non Asian people need to give space for Asian Americans to tell the stories as well,
sure.
because we are so conditioned to erase, so conditioned to invisibilize. We are so conditioned to view Asian Americans as a model minority
Mm,
when, as we all know, that was built in the 60s specifically to separate Japanese Americans from Black people.
yep.
Because that term came out right after the wave of Black and Japanese collaborations. So a lot of Japanese Americans who survived the internment camps wound up, like Kiyoshi Kodamiya, like Yuri Kochiyama, who was a dear collaborator with Malcolm X. When Malcolm X was assassinated, she was the one who ran to him and held him as he was dying. Richard Aoki, who was with the Black Panthers, literally was a Black Panther, even though he was Japanese American. Of course, that's also controversial because I believe it was the FBI released that he was an informant, but
Mm,
whether or not that's true, we can never tell given
sure.
the FBI's work to dismantle the Black Panther Party through
Right.
COINTELPRO. So, all that. Um, so, I think for a lot of non Asian folks, it's really important that we also do the work in learning that history to appreciate Asian America's contribution to social justice, Asian America's contribution to civil rights. And I think non Asian folks need to recognize that Asian Americans were critical to civil rights movement. I mean, for example, a lot of Japanese Americans were a part of writing legislation that is affirmative action. There's so many things. Filipino Americans and Mexican Americans, when they collaborated for the Delano grape strike, that was a huge shift for labor rights.
Right.
So I think a lot of non-Asian folks need to undo that erasure by learning this history too, and
Right.
recognizing that, yes, Asian Americans have a legacy of resistance. Asian Americans have a legacy of social justice.
What I'm taking away, especially from the answer to both of these questions, is not only is this self education piece incredibly important, but I think there's room for us to do it together, to grow and learn together, as opposed to, I
Absolutely.
mean, we obviously have to do our own work on our own individually, but I think there's so much space for us to do this together. So instead of feeling like we learn about some other group and then go and try and be like, okay, here's what I know about you, and getting it maybe wrong, or
Right.
just not maybe approaching it appropriately. There's space for us to do it together where we can like make mistakes, but in a place of safety, in a place of
Right.
collaboration, in a place of
Right.
accountability. I think,
Right.
and that accountability piece is something we've been missing for so long. As somebody who sits at the intersection of Asian and non-Asian communities, how have you seen that change over the last 3 years, particularly from your perspective as someone doing this on the ground work
Mm.
daily?
Yeah. So one thing I definitely noticed, which makes me really, really sad, um, is a lot of Black Asians coming out to me as Asian,
Mm,
which I I found that really heartbreaking to know that anti-Asian sentiment is so institutionalized, that we mixed Asians have had to like invisibilize ourselves. We've had to
sure.
hide in order to like not face anti-Asian violence. Um, which like for myself, growing up in a Jamaican household where being Black and Asian is just so commonplace. It's like whatever. Like
Right.
everyone's
Right.
Black
You're
and
just
Chinese,
you. It's just, yeah,
right?
I'm just me.
That's what it is. so like, so of course, like but being in an American landscape where we are so taught self-segregation, we are taught to segregate our communities. Um, the past year, I think, has definitely helped people understand, um, and really make more room. I mean, it still comes from a place of non-Asian folks still haven't done that work to
Right.
understand Asian American history, which again, that goes back to just how efficient white society is at erasing this history to maintain model minority myth, to
Right.
maintain the myth of adjacency to whiteness. Um, and so it's been really sad seeing, but also kind of wonderful now that the work is giving other people who are like me the space and agency to say, I too am Asian American.
Mm,
And
yeah.
there is a certain beauty, I think, to Asian American and Asian America that is so unique. It's that Asian America is transcendent of race and racial
Mm,
boundaries. Like in the Black community, we always say Blackness is expansive, but I think Asianness is transcendent. Like we transcend so many ideas about what a race should look like because
right.
there's folks like me, folks like you, there's South Asians, West Asians, there's the Pacifica. Well, if we combine or if we think of them as in the same category, because there's some Pacifica folks don't
Right.
identify
Yeah.
as part of Asian America, and I am unlearning that right now.
Right. Right.
Something I learned this year, and I'm like, oh, like I know here in the East Coast it's more conflated. On the West Coast, it's like we are different people. So things I am unlearning too right now, but particularly for Asian America, like there is something wonderfully um, beautiful about how we transcend skin color, we transcend hair texture, once we are really open minded to Asian America. Of course, knowing that these are racial categories imposed on us, and of course, recognizing that Asian America is an identity that formed out of the um, Third World Liberation Front with Asian American students, with Black students, with Indigenous students at UCLA Berkeley. So, like, it's beautiful also recognizing that Asian America became a political identity in solidarity with other communities of color, which I just
Right.
find really wonderful about us. So, um, yeah, the past couple of years have definitely opened the door for that conversation,
Mm,
has opened many doors about how do we respect Asian Americans in these spaces? How do we learn to value Asian Americans outside of lenses that were imposed on us through white miseducation? How are we now no longer viewing Asian Americans through the lens of model minority?
Love it. I love that you talk about Asian American being transcendent. I haven't heard anyone describe it like that. And I think that's absolutely right because there's so many different things that go into it. And also naming how Asian American as a political term came to be specifically out of solidarity and not even that long ago. Like we also have this
Yeah.
young history of Asian America of what that means. That's also built on and a product of all of that work we talked about before that term was even a thing. Before we're even thinking about that, talking about it's built on and again the product of all of these things, all of these folks who have fought and struggled and thrived and triumphed over the course of our history in the face of erasure, in the face of marginalization,
Absolutely.
in the face of being pitted against other communities to try and position us as closer to whiteness and therefore a model minority.
Mhm.
You've been dropping so much knowledge, Rohan. I really, really appreciate it. And I can't wait for folks to be able to hear this conversation. And I want to be mindful of your time as well. So I only have a couple more questions for
Of
you.
course.
Who right now is inspiring you in the community? Doesn't even have to be in the community. Who right now is inspiring you to do the work that you do and whatever it is that they're inspiring you from?
Oh, that's such a hard question. Because, like, there's so many different threads
Right.
that come together to make the tapestry, right? So, like, obviously, these historical figures inspire me. But also for myself, because I am such a huge fantasy fan. I love fantasy. Fantasy is such a wonderful place for political examination
Mm.
of things. So I've been reading so much Asian fantasy
Okay.
that has been just like so like marvelous to not just like me feeling empowered as an Asian American, but also like viewing things to a place of possibility.
Love
So
that.
like who was I just reading? I was just reading Ken Liu's Dandelion Dynasty,
Okay.
and it's a Chinese epic fantasy that deals a lot with the formation of a dynasty of an emperor taking power. But then like in come these like colonial invaders, and I'm like, ah, like, oh my gosh, I was like, I'm totally resonating because I'm like, oh, this is totally how I feel about so many things, about how so many of our societies were so like in our own political struggle, and in come the colonizers and just fuck everything over. So that's been like a really inspirational piece for me because like I'm still in a place of organizing from that space of expansive imagination and allowing these stories that create possibilities to sort of like influence. So like
Sure.
also right now I'm reading Nassim Jamnia's Bruising of the Kilwa, and it's like a Persian fantasy about these people who are basically surviving like ethnic cleansing.
Mm.
And so they fled into another country, but the other country is very xenophobic or like, we don't want you here. So now there's all
Right.
these race riots. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what a way to just politically examine and affirm our experiences. So that's been really influential to me right now.
I love that. I love the way that we can examine different genres and forms of media and tell these stories.
Yeah.
Again, like going back to being adopted, like we talk about in the community a lot, not having enough fictional narratives that talk about these experiences and unpack and examine those. And to hear you talk about how you're examining a lot of these things in these fantasy works. And I can't wait to be able to check out both of those series. Are they single books or are they series? Because I got to add to the shelves.
So Bruising of the Kilwa is a single book, but the Dandelion Dynasty is 4 books.
Okay.
It's a quartet, and they are 1,000 pages per book. So she is a journey, but I love it. So
Would expect nothing less from an epic, from a fantasy epic, at least 1,000
literally.
pages per book. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. We'll definitely include those in the show notes too for anybody listening who wants to dive into those as well. Last question, or actually, okay, I have two more questions.
I love it.
Second to last question is, a lot of people feel a lot of different ways about Heritage Month specifically. I've written a little bit about APAHM itself and how my feelings about it. Do you celebrate APAHM, and or what is currently giving you joy about the community heading into this month that is meant to be celebratory and reflective of our community?
Oof. I do celebrate this month. However, I also celebrate Asian American history every month. So
Yeah,
it's very much a this is the month where white people suddenly try to hire me to speak, which is like
sure.
great. Um
I'll take your money.
right? I
Right?
might charge extra because I'm Asian. I deserve it.
100%. Add 2 zeros. Add 2 zeros.
2 zeros at least. But not after the decimal point,
Yeah, I was
please.
just going to say pre-decimal. Pre-decimal.
um, I I think this is also a time where we as Asian Americans can really examine scarcity mentality, because
Mm,
it's like, why are we only being hired or spoken to
right,
1 month out of the year?
right,
You know, why do we go back to being invisible after May 31st?
right.
Like, make it make sense, people. So, while I think it's great to be like, yeah, we should have a time to really focus on our communities and hold space for us, like, why can't we hold space all year, like year round?
100%.
Yeah, so
I think that's a
that's
great thing
me.
about those, about hair, or one of the things that can be beneficial about it is we can have that conversation, examine why are we only talking about this in May? I get that it was
Right,
like a federal thing, and then they like it was a day, then a week, then a month, like it had to
right,
go through this process to get even that amount of time. But
right,
why are we feeling like we need to be siloed here? Why aren't we continuing that conversation before May 1st and after May
right,
31st? So I
right.
appreciate you naming that and sharing
Yeah.
that. All right. Last question for real. How do we as an audience, how do listeners, how do people who are hearing this conversation right now support you?
Oh my gosh. So you can support me with money. Just kidding. Okay, abolish money, but until money is abolished, so like a girl needs to survive and eat food. Um,
You got to. You got to.
you got to. But you can definitely support the Blasian March at blasianmarch.org, on all platforms: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, to see upcoming events, to contribute that way. Um, you can also support me personally, on my website, diaryofafirebird.com. You'll find all my writing. I am accepting commissions for writing. I am accepting commissions for speaking engagements. Um, so if you like what you heard today, please feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, Diary of a Firebird is also my handle on all platforms.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Folks, get out onto your computers or your mobile devices, whatever you might have in front of you right now, and hire Rohan to come into wherever space that you occupy and speak on these things. If you made it to this far in this conversation, you know that they've dropped so much knowledge, that they have shared so much in such a short time. And you also know that I'm a huge fan as well. So if you've been following the show, then you know that I'm bringing people in who are going to be able to address, again, these missing pieces of the conversation. And Rohan, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit down. A little behind the scenes, we had an earlier recording, was supposed to be one of the first interviews that I did for this, had some stuff come up and needed to reschedule. Rohan was kind enough to make that request happen. And here we are today, finally able to sit down and have an incredible conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This is amazing.
Absolutely. I really, really appreciate it. Again, this is the APAHM Conversation series. Super excited to be able to share this with y'all. If you want to find anything that Rohan and I just talked about in this interview, you can do all of that in the show notes. If you want to find us, you can do that at Conversation Podpiece on Instagram. And if you feel so inclined to leave a rating or review on whatever podcast player you're currently listening to this on, we would greatly appreciate it as well. And lastly, if you are interested in supporting the show in the future in any way, feel free to hop in my DMs or visit my website, patrickintheworld.me. Until next time, I'm Patrick Armstrong, and this has been Conversation Piece. Thanks, Rohan.